Hello and welcome to China Focus. I'm Shirley Zhang. Now, it was a case that caused outrage throughout China. Last August, a woman named Tang Hui was sentenced to a year and a half in a labor camp. Her crime? Repeatedly petitioning government officials to increase the sentences of 7 men who had kidnapped her 11-year-old daughter, raped her, and forced her into prostitution. Now, after Tang's case became public, there was a public outcry, and she was only served 8 days of her sentence. However, now she's asking for the local officials to give her an apology and to compensate her for the time she spent in a labor camp. That request last week was denied. Now, this is all happening at the same time that the Chinese Communist Party has recently announced that they will reform the labor camp system. So today we'll take a look at Tang Hui's case and what that says about labor camp reform with Jason Ma and Chen Zhifei. So this decision to kind of first of all, put her in a labor camp and also to deny her compensation for her time in the labor camp and deny her an apology. It was a local decision, right?
Right. There's, this labor kind of so-called labor education system. It's totally kind of out of the legal system. It's a committee, and even sometimes it's just like police. They just saying like, I think that we should send this guy to labor camp. They will do it. And basically, she was sentenced, so-called sentenced to labor camp for 1.5 years, and by this committee, local committee, because of Yongzhou labor camp committee, and then they released her after 8 days because of the huge pressure outside all over China for humanitarian consideration. And but now clearly, when they kind of the reason sentenced her is because they said she disturbed the public order by repeatedly kind of petitioning. And indeed, the original reason is her daughter at that time was 11 years old, was gang raped.
Right, and so it's a pretty egregious crime.
Yeah, was put in kind of a brothel for 3 months and falsely. And then nobody locally, no police local want to set up the case, even accept this as a criminal case. And because of she kind of consistent petition for 6 years, they set up the case, sentence those guys. But during those sentences, there are a lot of dramas. Like sometimes they just kind of ignore all those kind of criminal things. And also, those people, during the 3 months, over 100 people raped this girl, 11 years ago, and all those people was only put in jail for 15 days as a kind of a very kind of even not a crime. Yeah. It's just like a misdemeanor kind of behavior. And indeed, in China, that should be a crime because that's 11 years ago. So the mother said, no, you should also punish those people who kind of raped my daughter in the brothel. But this requirement is considered can disturb the public order and sentence her to 1.5 years in labor camp. Yeah.
So why do you think that the local officials are saying that they are not going to compensate her?
Because they said, well, our decision was not wrong in the first case. And also this woman, Tang Hui, stepped up this time only because what he just described as a change or potential shift in government policy. She thought she had a better shot, she had a better chance now that the government has announced that they would reform or even abolish the so-called Laogai system, which meant labor camp through education or reform through education system, a super legal system, which is not defined clearly in China's legal regime. So what I saw is about this case is it's really a touchstone or litmus test about the real intent or will of the Chinese government implementing what they have promised the public.
Well, the announcement that they were going to first say stop using, but then they changed it to reform the labor camp system was made by the the PLAC, the Political and Legislative Affairs Committee, which is, a national organ of the party. So this decision was made by the local officials to deny that her compensation. Can you say that there's just like a difference between the local and national? Like that's why there's...
At least clearly that's the indication, because at least in the meeting, published version of the meeting, kind of they saying like in the future, all those people who kind of appeal to the government in the past, you use that as reason to put them to labor camp, but in the future, we shouldn't do this. Clearly, that's a decision in the central government in the meeting, and still the local government stand behind their previous decision of sentencing her because of appealing, constantly, repeatedly.
So her case basically would fall directly under the, we're not going to put petitioners in labor camps anymore.
Put in this category very neatly. So that's why I argued that it's really a litmus test. And then we're seeing there is at least ostensibly a difference between the central government and local government in terms of going forward with this kind of policy.
And also, that's a very good indication of how much power right now the new generation of kind of leaders in China have, how much influence they have to the local officials. I mean, people right now, local officials can ignore what is saying in the central government.
So they knew what the central government said, right?
Right. I mean, constantly, kind of Western world all consider like a Chinese CCP is a very powerful kind of party. They are controlling every corner of China very tightly. No, that's not the case. I mean, local government, they have kind of their very strong power. I mean, only those policies that can make money for them, they will follow. All other policies which can hurt their benefit, like this kind of case, they will ignore it, use all kinds of way to ignore it. That's the reason the previous leader, Wen Jiabao, saying like, most of my order will not get out of Zhongnanhai, which is the compound all the leader live. So basically, this is something kind of people should realize. I mean, that's not a very efficient kind of control system.
I wouldn't take that argument too far. I still believe we're talking about a ruthless authoritarian regime that has really tooth in its body.
To people, but
depending on the policy, and of course, like Jason said, it depending on whether the local government will make money out of it. But on the other hand, I think the local officials have built up a lot of experience dealing with these matters. They could sense whether the government really want to do it or not. On this particular issue, probably they have found out the government backed down immediately after they issued the first statement. When they first mentioned it, they said they're going to abolish the system, stop using it. And then they said there's reform. Reform is quite different from abolish. So they could see that there are still a lot of disagreements over the top. And implementation could be a thorny, confusing matter. So they sense that, first of all, as Jason mentioned, there's not in our interest. Secondly, they said, okay, government is not serious about it. It's totally different from Nanzhou case, South Weekly, because in that case, the local officials knew, government will be very, very serious about it. You really have to be intolerant of those editors at the publication because government see this as a lifeline. Really, their interests are at stake. But on this issue, they think government is very kind of casual, so they don't care.
So if it's an issue of interpretation by the local officials, is it fair to use Tang Hui's case as a litmus test for whether they will reform labor camps?
Right. A lot of people kind of read in that way. I mean, basically people are saying that this is clearly an indication showing at least the central government are not serious about it, and the local government so can boldly kind of do this kind of thing, which is directly contradicted to what the order issued by the central government.
But does that say something about the central government? Because if it's the local government ignoring the central government, it doesn't necessarily mean the central government.
It's an indication of the whole system when it comes to legal reform, because the new generation leaders led by Xi Jinping has really made a point and promised the public that they're going to start out reforming the legal system so that the country will be better managed. However, the first thing they did was reforming the petitioning the labor camp system. However, Tang Hui's case showed that they were not serious about it. So that will actually lead to more issue. What about the new promises, other promises given by Xi Jinping?
Yeah, indeed, which is, for me is showing like how weak Xi Jinping as a leader is there. I mean, basically, when he has a decision and immediately, because I know, I mean, when this Politburo, the kind of a AC member leader gave this order about the reform of the labor camp, that's not his idea because he will not have this kind of huge decision. The power definitely from people in the very top circle, some of them, but immediately that was changed or even like abolished. That's an indication of the central leader group. the standing committee in the Chinese Communist Party is fighting within it, and which is the indication of China leadership right now is not established. And everyone over there have some power which to control other, restrain others. So if this is happening, keep happening as what it is right now, we will see a pretty chaos kind of leadership over there. And we will see local government will become bolder and bolder to do whatever they want to do.
You take one step back from this case and you ask the second question. Okay, let's assume the government has abolished the labor camp system. Then how are they going to deal with the growing incidences of public disobedience? Okay, there have been up to 10,000, if not more, so-called public 100,000, probably 10 times more. Sorry, I'm talking about those really big ones that involve tens of thousands of people, like Wuhan, like those kind of mass incidents. And how are they going to deal with that? From history, we have seen that the legal petitioning or the labor camp system would be a very effective tool for the government to corral the public, to control the public sentiment. So this has made the abolition issue totally irrelevant, whether it's been abolished or not. If it has been abolished, there's going to be another similar system under different name that will take its place. Probably more ruthless, probably more effective in the eyes of government to control today's China. So I think this discussion about whether they're going to reform it is totally meaningless unless there is some systematic change to the whole legal system, to the whole thinking of the people in China.
Right. I mean, basically, I think this so-called abolish of this labor camp issue is not a real topic, is because even without the leadership, even you go through those so-called official trial, legal trial, they still can 100% manipulate the whole process and then do whatever they want to do. So without justified legal system, changing this so-called labor camp is not meaningless. Even they kind of abolish it, still China will not a country ruled by law.
So what do you think will happen with Tang Hui's case? I mean, the pressure changed, pressure changed her sentence. She only served 8 days. Could more pressure from, the public over her denial of compensation make a difference?
She planned to appeal. I mean, again, that's another, if the huge kind of outside pressure to the local government, and then all the internet makes this kind of a national issue, the central government have to get involved, then this case will become either more clear indication of the determination of the central government regarding this labor camp issue.
Because what if they give her compensation? What will that say?
$400, right? She's asking $400. If she got a compensation, I think, of course, she deserves it. Definitely deserve more than that. But I think which is the indication of at least one section may decide to yield to the public opinion. And right now, public opinion right now in China is stronger and stronger. The newer generation have more kind of sense of citizenship kind of city. So that is the real driven force of Chinese future. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you both for joining us and talking about this issue today. And thank you for watching. For more on this and other issues in China, join us at ntd.tv.